Thanks for joining us on the next episode of Every Citizen Armed. Today, we're going to have Steve Hilton on. Yeah, he is running for the governor of California. Great guy, great conversation. Learned a lot about him. Learned about what his plans are for California. I think a lot of you are going to really like what he has to say. I was real impressed with him. I've watched him for years on Fox. I've been real happy with what he has to say. He is very conservative in his thoughts. He really does support the Second Amendment. He's into guns rights, gun issues, really paying attention to that. But at the same time, he's really on top of what's happening for California overall, whether it be the oil industry, which we talked a lot about, because that actually fits really well into our community. And I hope a lot of you enjoy this and really like what we had to say. And here we go. Let's get to the show.
We've all seen it in the news. Someone defends themselves or their loved ones only to find themselves fighting a legal battle that can cost everything. Mortgage payments, retirement savings, even their kids' college funds, gone, just to prove they did nothing wrong. That's why Firearms Legal Protection, the official sponsor of Every Citizen Armed, exists. For as little as 33 cents a day, FLP gives you unlimited legal defense for criminal and civil cases. No caps, no hidden fees, no surprise bills. If you have to defend yourself, FLP will handle the legal battle so you can focus on what matters: your family, your future, your freedom. We insure our homes, cars, and health. Why wouldn't we protect ourselves legally when it matters most? Go to firearmslegal.com, choose your plan, and use promo code ECA at checkout for exclusive pricing. No setup fee and a locked-in lifetime rate. Protect yourself today, and Firearms Legal Protection will have your back when it matters most.
Every Citizen Armed ensures that every American patriot is prepped with knowledge, perspective, and firepower.
He counted on America to be passive. He counted wrong.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Appreciate you taking the time to come on with us today.
Of course, it's a pleasure.
Now, I've seen you all up and down the state running around and meeting everybody. I think that's outstanding.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You bet. I'll tell you, what really caught my eye was the other day when you were in Kern County, where we're at, obviously, and you brought up the oil industry.
Oh, yes.
And looking at what we really need there. But obviously with our podcast, it's called Every Citizen Armed.
Yes.
So you can kind of figure out who our listeners are by looking at that. So, and I'm curious, a lot of folks don't, they've seen you on Fox, they've seen you around. How would you like to introduce yourself a little bit to the folks that don't know you?
Well, first of all, I just want to say, I think two things about my voice. First of all, I'm a little croaky. I've been on the road a lot. I guess I've been yelling at the Democrats too much. So there's that. It's all good, but I apologize for that. I'm also going to say, don't worry about my accent. I'm still working on that. I was born and raised in the UK, but I'm a proud American. So no worries on that front. I moved here with my wife and my sons in 2012. They were little boys then, now they're teenagers, and became a citizen in 2021. So proud to be an American, proud to be a Californian. I do want to say one other thing, which is that my parents were, actually, really my roots are in Hungary. My parents are Hungarian, and they fled communism in Hungary, and that's why I ended up in England. So as you can tell from that, I'm a very strong believer in freedom, having actually experienced the exact opposite in a communist regime. And I guess, as we all are now, experiencing in California.
Well, that's why we're pretty excited to see you running, because that's, especially with that background, actually, we often refer to California as the People's Republic of California.
Yes.
So maybe you could help prevent that.
That's the plan.
Get us back to normal. So, one of the big questions when we ask our listeners what we'd like them to ask, we will start off with some gun laws, if that's okay.
Of course, yeah.
And, it's unfortunately, our governor now has made it very hard for a lot of folks to be able to defend themselves and defend their families. So in what way do you look at that? Or you're gonna kind of jump into a rough setting up there. You're kind of outnumbered when it comes down to it in our state government. How can you help us when it comes to that?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to say how strongly I support the Second Amendment and how much I agree with not just the specific policies and all of that, of course, and I'd love to hear more about what would be the most helpful changes that we need to make. But I just want to talk about the idea, actually, because it's interesting, just coming from the UK, of course, there's a lot of ignorance about gun laws and gun culture in England. So I made a real effort to learn and to understand. And I think it's deeper than just the, your rights and the Second Amendment and all that kind of stuff as an American. But I think that, the two parts to it that are so deeply important, of what you just touched on, one, that idea that you in the end are responsible, and it's your responsibility, and you have the right and the responsibility to defend yourself, your property, your family, everything that matters and is close to you. That's a beautiful thing about America. And the thing that other people in other countries don't understand is not just the beauty of that idea of self-reliance, that you're not going to just look to the government to protect what's most precious, but you stand up and do it yourself. There's that beautiful idea, but there's also the practicality. I mean, I was up with the sheriff in, I don't know, Sonoma County, just to pick an example, just the other week, and he was very proud of his response time for his call center. I remember the numbers because it was very striking. He said 99.3% of the calls are answered within 3 seconds. I said, well, that's amazing. He said, yeah, we work hard on that. He said, yeah, but the actual response time to get an officer out there, if it's something out on the coast, that's like an hour. Yes. And this is what people don't understand. This is a big country. And so you're not going to hang around for the police. So I think that's the practical stuff in terms of you're protecting what's precious to you. And it's also the philosophical stuff. But there's, of course, that deeper level, which is the idea that in the end, the citizens are all powerful and the government shouldn't be almighty, and that you need to make sure that you can't get into a situation where the public is disarmed against a government that is overmighty. And actually, that should be something the left understand, because they're constantly going on about authoritarian this and authoritarian that. Well, if they really meant that, they would support the Second Amendment too, because of that very, very precious idea.
Well, I think you're trying to put common sense into an area where there's not a lot of common sense that sets in there. So, and I think realistically, I did sit down with our sheriff here in Kern County. I don't know if you've had a chance to meet Donnie Youngblood.
Don Youngblood, yeah, I met him. Yeah,
yeah, he's outstanding, and he even told us that. He said, "Hey, even on a great day, it's going to be 3 to 8 minutes before we get there on a 911 call.
Yeah,
it's over by then. You better be ready to take care of yourself." And he definitely recommends that. So one of the things that's really been a problem here, obviously, is going to be the border. And that is a big issue that you're kind of jumping right into. And, great to have somebody who lives in California, understands this. And I think you really grab it and understand what's going to happen. What areas with that? I think it actually ties into our homeless issue. All of these things kind of work together when you think about it. But as a governor, what can you do to help with the border? I mean, I see what President Trump's doing. He's helped a bunch. But is there a way you could help with that, and then also with the sanctuary cities?
Well, that's the most important. Now that we have a president who actually not just believes in our laws and upholding them, but acts upon it, and has put the full force of the federal government behind the border enforcement that should have been there all along, that Americans expect. He really has slowed the flood to a trickle, and that's incredibly important and incredibly helpful to us. I mean, I would want to. I mean, you can just be assured, and the administration can be assured. When I'm the governor, there'll be just full cooperation with all federal authorities in relation to border control and immigration enforcement, because that's our duty. It's federal policy, and so the number one thing is cooperate fully with the federal government in this area. But when you talk about sanctuary policy, I mean, it's just obscene, honestly, that you have these Democrats, posing on this issue and say, oh, we're so, ethical and whatever and compassionate. What are you talking about? You are actually releasing, effectively, the most violent and dangerous criminals into communities. to cause mayhem and crime and injury and death. And I mean, it's just unbelievable. And yet they try and make out that this is something positive and noble. It's absolutely outrageous. So you've got a number of problems. You've got the original sanctuary state law, SB 54, which was passed in 2017, the first Trump administration, in response to that by Democrats. And then on top of that, you've got individual cities layering on the insanity. I mean, the most egregious is San Diego. I was down in San Diego the other week, and I couldn't believe what they're doing down there in terms of not just going even further in terms of blocking cooperation with ICE, and even further in terms of protecting violent criminals instead of the community. They're also, to add insult to injury, as it were, they're taking money from San Diego taxpayers to pay the legal expenses of illegal immigrants on deportation notices. And there's just no justification for any of that. And San Diego taxpayers are paying for it. I mean, all of that has to end. It is just unacceptable. And one way or another, we'll stop it. I mean, one interesting thing on the state law is that my friend Michael Gates, who was the city attorney in Huntington Beach, which has offered such strong resistance to the insanity from Sacramento and the lunacy from right across the board. One of the things on housing and on so many other issues, and they pass voter ID locally and so on. But one thing that Michael Gates did before he actually joined the Trump administration in the Department of Justice is file a lawsuit in federal court. And the case is that the state's sanctuary state law is unconstitutional. It violates the federal constitution. And so that's a really important case. And so I'm hoping, and I think he's got a strong case, and I'm hoping very much that by the time I'm governor, the law itself will have been invalidated. If that doesn't happen, then I will have to take action here in the state. But one way or another, we cannot have a situation where these violent criminals are being harbored by our own governments in California. It's ridiculous.
Is that getting close to the Supreme Court now?
I think it's no. It's right at the beginning. So he just filed it a few months ago. So
okay.
I think it's going to take time, but we'll see.
Now, one of the things that I've noticed in the past, you're a successful guy. You've done very well in your other business, and you're very well known on Fox. What are you doing getting into this craziness? You're going to jump right into this mess.
Thank you. I appreciate what you said. I mean, look, most of my career, I should say, people know me from Fox, and I'm talking and I have a podcast and whatever. But most of my career, I've been in the private sector. I've started companies and run businesses, or most recently, before moving here, I worked in the government. I worked for David Cameron when he was the Prime Minister. I led the implementation of our domestic reform program when we were getting ready for government, and then inside of the government, I was senior advisor to the Prime Minister. So one way or another, I've been a doer rather than a talker. And I guess what happened was, I started a company here when we moved here. After we moved here, I taught at Stanford for a little bit and then did a tech startup. So the thing is that as the years went on, and especially here in California, just things were going from bad to worse. I guess I just got more and more, I don't want to say frustrated, but more and more like, I want to do something about it. I don't just want to talk about it. That's my natural instinct, is a doer, not a talker. And so step by step, I got more engaged. I set up an organization to analyze the problems facing California, develop policy solutions. That was called Golden Together. That's like 3 years ago. I wrote a book called Caliphalia, laying out the problems and the solutions. And then I just thought, no, I want to step up. I want to make the change happen. And I've got the various ingredients, I think, to be able to not just win, but once we've won, govern effectively, to bring just what you said, bring common sense back so that we can make California golden again.
Well, yeah, and you had another group called Crowd Pack,
yes.
I think it was.
Yeah.
And you were really working to try and get more, help folks get into politics to feel that they could really help.
Yeah.
How did that work?
Well, it was a really interesting experience because the vision of it, exactly as you said, was to make it easy. It was a business. It was a startup. And it really, if people remember that startup Kickstarter, or it's a little bit one of those things where the idea was to make it easier for people to run for office without depending on the big donors or the political machine. So you get more independent-minded people into office to simplify that whole process of running for office. And it was a really good platform. And I started out saying to myself, I just said, I want it to be like for everyone. like all comers, not one party or another. Because I particularly was interested in independent candidates. And everyone said, no, you've got to pick a side. And I said, well, I'm not sure about that. Let's see how it goes. And actually, funnily enough, the market spoke. And the company, the users did pick a side. It was very interesting. Around about the time of, well, it's after President Trump was elected. And then you had all the kind of left, and, do you remember that it was called the Resistance? And they were like, the Resistance, and we're going to fight Trump. Right. And so you got a lot of people, a lot of new people got into politics, and they found our platform and they started using it. So suddenly it really took off on the left. And just at that time, I started my show on Fox. And so it became very kind of tricky because I was the founder and CEO of this company, but more and more it was being used by these kind of far left candidates. And in the end, after a couple of years of that, I looked at the data, and it turned out that I think around 87% of the candidates on our platform were Democrats, and about 93% of the money that was raised was going to Democrats. And I just thought, well, this makes no sense, for either of us. For the company, it basically has become a Democrat platform. So you might as well say that publicly and be that, and then you'll do better as a business. But I can't possibly have anything to do with that. So we made the change, and I resigned, and that was that.
I would love to see something like that happen, because I know there's a lot of people out there that could get involved. And I actually met with some folks. How do we get them?
It was a good service. It was really good. I was very proud of it. We designed a really good product, and it's needed. I agree with you.
Yeah, I was talking with one of the groups here, and they said, well, if they don't come in with the money, if they don't come in with that, I said, but you're not getting the best candidate necessarily. And I know we have some good ones out there. And
do you know the way we did it was very interesting. That's why I'm glad you're asking me about it, because it's my idea. I felt good. Here was the thing, which was a lot of people are put off who are good people are put off from running for office because they think it's going to be a nightmare raising money. And so that's what puts them off. But actually, they've got bigger networks than they think. And you never know where you're going to get money. And it shouldn't be a barrier. And so we created this thing, which was allowing people to test the waters. So you could create a page, just like a fundraising page, and you could say, here, my name's Jim, and I'm running for city council or whatever. Support my campaign. Here's what I want to do. You could put all your stuff up there. You didn't have to create a website. You could basically put all your information, if you have a little selfie video, whatever you want. And then, but the crucial part is this, you can make a pledge, but your card is only charged if the person actually runs for office. So it's a way to test the waters, to see if you can actually, if you've got the support, and if you don't have the support, you don't have to run, and nobody's paid any money. So it's an interest. It was really effective, but for Democrats, sadly.
No, I really, like I said, I'd like to see that. Definitely the conservatives do more like that. And
yes.
I really think that I was on a school board for 7 years. And of course, I was not very popular with the unions, as you could imagine. And they sent a candidate after me, which was fine. That's their right. But I think more and more of us need to get on those school boards.
100%.
And local government is where a lot of this really needs to take hold, which I'm sure you're seeing up and down the state right now. 100%. So that's, in what way could you help Kern County? We know, I was just talking with our producer here earlier today, and a lot of folks, they don't realize how much oil is in this county.
Oh my God, I can't tell you. I spent a lot of time there. I was there just now in the campaign, but I've been there for years because, as I said, I've been learning about the issues. I always have these twin emotions, and it's very strong, especially when I'm in the county, but everywhere in California, when you see what these people are doing. Number one, it's heartbreaking to see the cruelty and the suffering and the pain that's caused by these stupid policies. But it's also infuriating. And in a way, that's what makes me keep going, because we can't put up with this. And so you look at the insanity of their policy on fossil fuels. They think they're doing this war on fossil fuels, climate change, blah, blah, blah. They're not. Like, we're basically using the same amount, roughly, as we ever were. But of course, as everyone in the county knows, we're now importing it. So we use about 1.8 million barrels of oil a day in California. We could be producing well over half of that, at least, in Kern County. Yeah. We used to produce up to 65, 70% of what we use. Now, I mean, by the way, every time I go to Kern County, it's less. So I remember, because it stuck in my head, the first time I was in the county and I asked how much we produce down there, it was like 400,000 barrels. Now 250. I mean, it's just going down and down and down. And it is outrageous because we're not using this, we're just importing it. And so the number one provider of our oil now is Iraq. Yeah. Like, it's insane. And they're shipping it halfway around the world on these super tankers running on bunker fuel, spewing out carbon emissions. Absolutely insane. So now, the good news is, of all the areas of policy, this is one where actually you could make probably almost the quickest difference as governor, because the way that they've been crushing the industry is by refusing to issue permits. And for three types of things: for maintenance of existing wells, for expanding existing wells, you probably know all this, sidetracking, where you can basically take a well that's producing 5 barrels a day, turn it into 100, and then drilling new wells within existing fields. No one's talking about, doing an oil well in the middle of Yosemite, right? This is an existing field. It's full of oil wells, right? I went to see them. I mean, I saw the pads, right, ready to go. Yeah. And not allowed because of stupidity. So all of that. So permits for maintenance, expansion, and new wells. You can get all that done by appointing new people to CalGEM, which regulates the industry, and telling them to issue permits. And so actually you can make a very quick difference. I've been talking to the industry a lot. I said, what could be done if we have the maximum aggressive opening up posture from the governor and assume everything goes well? I've been told we can double production every 2 years. So that would make a huge difference to the county.
How would we go about with the refineries? We really got to get the refineries on.
Well, I just got to tell you, this week, I don't know if you saw, but I launched my plan on gas. Yeah. So as we know, because of the combination of restricting California production, the low carbon fuel standard, cap and trade, the regulations on refineries, the summer blend, all these endless regulations, we have the highest gas prices in America. Higher than Alaska in the middle of the, not Alaska, higher than Hawaii in the middle of the ocean. I mean, it's just, so I will get rid of all of that. And step by step, that brings the price down, plus halving the gas tax. So here's the simple point. With the Democrats, we're heading towards $9 gas. When I'm governor, it will be $3 gas. $3 gas with Steve Hilton. That is the policy that I announced this week. And by opening up production here, you get more business for the refineries and business, and they're set up to deal with our oil, not some of the crude that's coming in from overseas. Yeah. And so part of the story of keeping the refineries here is opening up production here.
Well, I think we need to build some new refineries. I think we'd have to get the permits out there can the governor help get more permits so we could build another refinery? Yes. I mean, look, I think the last refinery was built in the 70s, if I remember right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in very active discussions with all of the key players in the industry about what we can do on all of these things. On gas, actually, that's another point. We talk about oil because we talk about gas in terms of cars. Sure. But gas as a fuel is very important as well. And of course, that's all part of the Kern County story as well. I mean, there's more gas a little bit further north, but the point is that if you switch to electricity, we also have the highest electricity costs in the country, which is also insane because we've got all this natural gas in California, which is the most affordable, reliable way of generating electricity. Instead, it's all, which actually, and not too bad for the environment compared to other sources, way better than coal. But instead, of course, they're obsessed with wind and solar, which is unreliable, unaffordable, except with subsidies. It's just ridiculous. So we should open up gas production as well. Sure. And that means we can get our gas-fired power stations going at full capacity instead of what they're doing now, which is keeping them down as basically backup for wind and solar, which means they're less efficient. And that means we're not using gas. I mean, we import 90%. On gas, the situation is even worse than oil. We import 90% of the gas we use. It's just insane.
Imagine this. You defend yourself or a loved one, and instead of being seen as the good guy, you're arrested, charged, and forced to fight for your freedom. You know you did nothing wrong, but now you're looking at thousands in legal fees. We've seen it happen. Good people losing everything just to prove they acted lawfully. That's why you need firearms legal protection. For just 33 cents a day, FLP gives you unlimited legal defense for criminal and civil cases. No caps, no hidden fees, no payback, just real protection with experienced self-defense attorneys who have your back. Plus, you'll get 24/7 attorney access, red flag protection, and more. Go to firearmslegal.com, pick your plan, and use promo code ECA for exclusive pricing, no setup fee, and a lifetime rate lock. Because when the worst day of your life happens, you shouldn't face it alone.
Yeah. And I think we're finding out more and more that wind and solar are not as environmentally friendly as people like to think they are. You look at what's happening out there in close to Vegas, and they're having to shut down the large solar fields that are out there. And, we run into some pretty serious drought situations in California. You use a lot of water for those big solar fields. I don't know how they really think that's going to justify itself, but you touched on a point about bringing the oil over from Iraq. And I know it kind of goes against not necessarily against, but it all ties together. We're about Second Amendment, we're about rights, but at the same time, it's all about, getting a better government. If you really think in the environment and trying to work in a friendly way to have that, and that's an important issue for some folks, do they really think that we're not going to be more efficient, run it cleaner than they are in the other countries?
This point you just made, I think, goes to the heart of everything that's going wrong in California, because the people in charge, we have 15 years of one-party rule from the Democrats, and it's totally ideology driven. It's not practical. It's not about helping people. It's about pushing forward their ideological agenda. And they don't care what the practical consequences are. So with something like this, it's like, well, we're waging war on fossil fuels. They kind of they tell themselves that, like kind of, oh, aren't we, great climate warriors? And they don't even think about the fact that it's coming from Iran. They don't even know. They just think that they're doing a good job. They don't care because they don't actually care about the practical consequences of their policies. That's why, and you see that in every area. You look at their insane ideologies when you get to the school system, and we have the worst results now in the country of fourth grade on the endless expansion of this bloated nanny state bureaucratic government and the taxes that people pay. I mean, everything is such a struggle in California because everything is made so expensive. I mean, all their regulations that make housing so expensive, rent, electricity, we talked about, water, that mostly everywhere, every single thing is the most expensive in the country. We also have the highest poverty rate in the country. We had, for most of last year, the highest unemployment rate in the country. I mean, this is a total disaster. That's why I called my book Caliphalia. And the subtitle was Reversing the Ruin of America's Worst Run State. And that's what they've done. They've taken the most beautiful, amazing state in the most magnificent country on earth, America. So as far as I'm concerned, that makes California the best place in the world. And they've ruined it because of their absolute insane combination of ideology and incompetence. And this is, I think people have had enough. And that's why I think that right now, after all these disasters, one after another, and the struggle it is for every family, particularly working class Californians, and every business, particularly small business, that people have had enough. And I think this is our best shot at actually turning things around and winning for at least 20 years.
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to it. Like I said, we can't wait to see you get up there and do some great things. So I'm sure you would. One of our big factors here that our listeners do talk about is they had new excise tax.
Oh yes,
on guns and ammunition. I'm sure you're familiar with that. I always look at that as that makes it really hard for lower middle income, lower income to protect their family and themselves and their property. If you're making it harder, I guess Newsom looks as he cannot outlaw the guns. So I'm just going to make it really hard for everybody. I'm going to make it hard for them to buy ammunition, make it hard for them to buy guns, make it extra expensive and extra rules. Are there certain things as a governor you could come in and help take some of those out of the way, take some obstacles?
Look, we've got to cut taxes on everything. Yeah. This is it's just vindictive, right? It feels very political, and they're doing it for all the reasons you describe. we've got to cut taxes right across the board. And that means you've got to cut spending. And so that's got to be a priority. So as far as I'm concerned, I mean, look what they've done. They've doubled the budget in the last 10 years. Okay. It's just endless growth and bloat in the government. Everything's worse as a result, and endless taxes to pay for it. So it's all got to come down. What I can't promise is that with a wave of wand, you can just sort of cut all these taxes, because you've got to deal with a legislature. And so some of these things you can do directly through executive action, like I spoke about in relation to oil and gas. But with other things, you've got to, it could be a negotiation with the legislature. And so I'll need to take a look at all of that and go through very specifically what we can do on each individual area. But broadly, my argument is all these taxes have to be reduced. And at least not increase. I mean, my tax plan is very simple. If your first 100,000 of income, tax-free, no state income tax. Over 100,000, flat tax of 7.5%. Because we've got to get, people are struggling to survive. I mean, it's so tough to afford basics. And that's to me an emergency. And so the governor, as Newsom showed, when he shut everything down, shut down businesses and schools and churches, when he did all that, he's got a lot of power. And so I will use my power as governor to the maximum extent possible, including on these really unfair taxes like this one on the one you're describing.
Yeah, it seems like he just threw that on there. I don't think that would even went through the legislature, if I remember right.
Well, that's good news.
I guess
then,
it did. I guess it did. But I think there is a way that hopefully, as a governor, you could help with.
Well,
that.
I'm going to be, I'm as aggressive as I can be to cut spending, cut taxes, get everything back in line with common sense.
That's pretty much all we can ask for right there. And we'll, if you don't mind, we'll talk a little bit about immigration, because
please,
you did it the right way. You came over legally. You spent the time. I mean, what'd you say? You came over 2012, legalized citizen. Became a citizen in 21. It was a large process.
Yes,
a long process, and I'm all for anybody that wants to come over illegally and do it the right way. How could we streamline that, but make it more efficient and more cost efficient for the folks that do want to come over legally?
Well, this is the point that makes me so angry. And actually, what's really interesting is that the people who are most offended by what's going on, and has been going on, well, not now, but like was going on, particularly with Biden, legal immigrants. So I was all over the state. I was in East Los Angeles, very working class Latino area a couple of weeks ago, meeting in a Mexican coffee shop. All those people, like you described, and actually many spent longer than I did with my family, and in a tougher way. And they would, and it's annoying. It's bureaucratic. I mean, I hate bureaucracy. And, you have to sort of go along to the office it's just annoying. And, you go there and you've got the wrong paperwork and you've got to come back and, etc. Right? So all these, and then you're saving and you're trying to make it in America and paying your taxes and doing everything right. And then you've got people just walk across the border and get everything on a plate, benefits, whatever, welfare. It's houses, cell phones. I mean, just a list of things. And the people who know this list of free stuff that you get as an illegal immigrant the most are the legal immigrants in working class communities who see that and they are so offended by it. In Chinatown, just the other day, in San Francisco, same story. I was talking to, some Chinese Americans there. They'd all say either they were, they were born here or they came here with their parents or become citizens themselves. All of them Americans, proud Americans, proud to be American. And I said, what's the big issue in your community? And they said, this free healthcare for illegal immigrants. It's outrageous, right? This is from legal immigrants saying it. They are the most offended by all of this. And so
they did it right.
Outrageous. It's just unacceptable. It's unfair. And we shouldn't accept it for a second. So, and what's unbelievable is Newsom, he was saying, he kind of got the message because he wanted people to think that he was reining that in. So in his budget announcement recently, he said, we're doing something to, narrow the eligibility for free Medicaid for illegal immigrants. full Medicaid for illegal immigrants. But that was BS. He actually, if you look at the numbers, which I did, I went through the budget. He increased spending on it from this year to next, 9.5 billion to 12.1 billion. It's got all of that has to stop. All of it. It's absolutely unacceptable.
I think anybody that really pays attention to what he's saying will hopefully know that he's not telling the truth. And all we see is him moving, trying to make his appearance go to the center a little more so he could run for in 2028.
Just like on biological men and girls sports, just the same. He said whatever it was to Charlie Kirk, and then he said, oh, it's deeply unfair. And he's done absolutely nothing about it.
I was so happy to see you come out on that. And that was one of the topics I wanted to bring up, because I have 2 daughters, and watch what they would have to go through. Now, luckily they're older, they're out of it now, but these young girls should not have to deal with this.
It's unbelievable. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm going to be a little bit graphic, but it's not obviously the high profile stuff that gets in the news, because you see these, sporting events happen, just as we saw last weekend at the track and field finals in Clovis in Fresno County. I went there to make my announcement about what I would do about it, but I just wanted to take a few steps back to stop it, because it's participation in sports, but it's also scholarships being taken away and going to people who taking opportunity away from girls. And in a way, the one that I just cannot believe the left are still defending is biological men and girls locker rooms. I mean, what are you talking about? Do you remember that story? It really, really stuck in my mind. I can still picture it. It was maybe a month ago now, and it was a teenage girl. It was on the Central Coast, San Luis Obispo, something like that. Yeah. And this girl went before the school board, and she was telling her story. She was in the locker room in her school with some friends, and a biological male, the teenage guy, male, came in and changing, as she put it. I remember with her, she went naked, totally intact, naked. And she complained about it, and she was the one that was punished. And then she went to the school board, and she was silenced for bringing it up. And you think, what is this? It's like a few years ago, we'd have thought that's a crime.
You could go do that on the pier in Pismo Beach, and you'd go to jail.
Exactly.
So why is that not illegal there?
100%. And so it must be. And so that's what the announcement I made. And here's the point. So Gavin Newsom said to Charlie Kirk, yes, it's deeply unfair. A couple of weeks later, there were 2 bills in the state legislature put forward by Republicans that would have made this illegal. But Gavin Newsom did nothing about it, didn't get involved, didn't help, nothing. Then he was asked why not. And he said, we've looked at this. I spent 2 years studying this, and I'm struggling. We're struggling, and we couldn't land anywhere. Couldn't figure it out. It took me about 2 days to figure it out. I went to my advisors, who Governor Pete Wilson's legal team, actually, who are working with me. And I said, how do we deal with this? I want an answer. I want to know, this has to be stopped. And the answer is that actually the law that enables all this absurdity, AB 1266, it was passed in 2013. It's the law that enables this violates the California Constitution in 2 ways. One, Article 28, the right to safe schools, Section 28, and 2, Section 31, gender discrimination. Because what is this if it's not discrimination against girls? So it's very simple. I will, on day 1, when I'm governor, demand that the legislature overturns that law. And if they refuse, then I will file a suit, take them to court, and invalidate the law because it violates the Constitution. So we're going to get it done one way or another. This will end.
I guess I'm surprised that I shouldn't be surprised. The California Supreme Court should have taken that up already.
Well, I mean, someone has to bring a case. The governor, and of course he's not going to do that because he's not. But he says one thing and does another. And you've got the whole, Democrat machine. I mean, I'm wearing it here. I'm just seeing it. If people can watch in video, this is what I got from Sophia Laurie. Save Girls Sports, this pink plate. I was there. I mean, we've got to do this.
Is that the young lady from San Luis Obispo?
No, it's different. It's a former track and field champion Sophia Laurie, fantastic campaigner, like our version of Riley Gaines, if you like, here in California.
Okay, very good. Very good. Yeah, I've been San Luis Obispo all the time, so I'm always looking for those ones to talk to. So that's, being in Bakersfield, that's a pretty easy trip for us. So what most do you want people to know about you? We've got a lot of it on here. We've covered a lot of different things, but people, I know people still need to get to know you. I mean, we all do, because we've all seen you for years, but I think you've laid it out pretty good.
So here's the thing. I just want to end with this, which is I've done a lot of different aspects of the things that are involved in this job. And I've been inside of a government and I've seen how it works at the very highest level. And I can see what doesn't work as well. And you've got to be absolutely ferocious, fierce in fighting the bureaucracy and the interests that are going to come against you. And we're going to have a lot of that in California. We're going to have there's what I call the Democrat industrial complex. You've got the machine politicians, you've got the unions that fund them, especially the government unions. You've got the activists that give them and the groups, all these kind of pressure groups and the environmental groups, all these different groups that give them their ideological instructions. And then you've got the bureaucrats who implement it all. And they've got used to having power all their own way. They've had it years, decades. No challenge, no real threat to their power. So I know that to take all that on, you've got to be ferocious. And you people who know me, I mean, I was the first one to speak out against the lockdowns. March 2020. Nobody else was doing it then. I was the first one to tell the truth about Fauci and the gain of function research and how the virus originated there. For all that, I was called all sorts of names, but I stuck to it and I was proven right. And there's a whole bunch of other issues like that, years before anyone else was talking about it. By the way, apart from President Trump, who was very much early on this, on China, right? Back in the day, I said we had to decouple from China. Even dumb things like kids and phones and whatever. So on issue after issue, I've been out there telling the truth, leading, and making sure that people understand the truth. And you got to have that courage, that conviction. And I think the final thing I'll say, I want to give everyone hope that change is on the way, because people say, oh, well, you're never going to get change in California. It's so deep blue and whatever. It's a much more Republican state than people think. Much more Republican. And there's a lot of Republicans here who've given up because they haven't had a strong, energetic, dynamic, forceful candidate and campaign to get behind. And that's what I'm going to provide. And remember that Donald Trump got more votes in California than any Republican presidential candidate for a generation. And if every single one of those voters votes for me for governor, I will be the governor. So it's all about getting our people to turn out and vote. And everyone can join in that. We need to build a grassroots army. And then we're going to pull this off. Right, the name of my show on Fox, it was the Next Revolution, as I often say.
I loved it.
We're going to make the next revolution the California Revolution.
I loved it. I know we got to get going. I know you got to get to another thing, but could I ask you one more question?
Please.
You brought up China. And that has something, I mean, obviously we have a lot of things. You were up Silicon Valley, you said. They control a lot up there. So I'm curious, and I'm seeing that a lot of Chinese are coming in and buying a lot of land around areas where we don't necessarily want them, and that's more of a state issue than a federal issue.
Yeah.
Will you block the Chinese government from buying land?
Yes, we can't have foreign governments, and especially hostile foreign governments, doing this. I mean, it's just unacceptable. And especially California, we're the fourth biggest economy in the world. We're a very, very precious and serious place. We matter more than any other state. And so we have to be strong on this. And we have to say no. And it's not just, it's also you're seeing the Chinese Communist Party and other foreign governments getting involved in propaganda in our schools and our university. All of that has to go, right? You can't accept this. You got to be strong on this. And I will be.
Well, I look forward to that. I accept it. Anything we can do to help. We're a small platform, but we definitely look forward to helping any way we can.
Well, I appreciate it very much. Thank you so much. And anyone who wants to get involved, stevehiltonforgovernor.com. There's a button there that says get involved. Sign up. We're just getting organized. We're still at the beginning of the campaign, but we're going to do this. It's going to be great.